Welcome to the What's New in Collector for ArcGIS. My name is Jeff Shaner. I'm the product lead for our Field Apps team, and with me today I have Doug Morgenthaler, who's our product owner for Collector. What we're going to do today is give you an overview of the current status of Collector for ArcGIS. We're going to walk through a series of demonstrations, show you some of the new features, and then spend a bit of time talking about what's coming next. So let's get started on Collector. Collector is Esri's premier field data collection app. It's been our longest standing app that's shipping on iOS, Android, and Windows 10. And we're really centered around providing a solution for field data collection workflows, whether that's accurately capturing the location of new information that you want to add to your GIS, whether it's inspecting data that you already have placed, or whether it's capturing new observations in the context of an emergency event or similar kind of non-asset-driven workflows. Collector is the application that Esri promotes to provide a solution for taking your maps out into the field. So just as a current status, for those of you that perhaps haven't used Collector or maybe are looking to use Collector and get the latest information out of us, we did a release of this new version of Collector in Q4 of last year. We added a couple of really key enhancements, the ability to use a line locator through an enhanced URL scheme piece of work that we did with a partner named EOS Positioning. What you can do there is actually capture a GPS position with high accuracy and Bluetooth and information from a Vivex line locator. So if you're out trying to capture underground line features, then you can use the Vivex line locator with an EOS Arrow receiver and put that information right into Collector. We also added PKI support. We also worked closely with the Dutch Cadastre to provide a very focused solution for fit-for-purpose parcel mapping as well. And then in the first quarter of this year, we added some great new features that we're going to spend some time on with you today. Those include snapping while you're doing construction work inside of Collector, the ability to edit multiple features at once, being able to reuse values you previously entered, adding integration with Tracker for ArcGIS, and simplifying the deployment of Collector through the ability to scan a QR code when signing in. We'll show a lot of this in the next few slides. I wanted to start with some of those basic enhancements that we've made to Collector this past year though. What you see running is a video that's showing you how you can download maps from the Collector app directly onto the device. And we've added some really cool new features in this latest version of Collector that you're going to want to take advantage of. First, now you can download more than one map area at a time. As you saw through the video playing, you can set the level of detail with a user-friendly approach of naming that matches what ArcGIS Online has. You can use bookmarks to quickly find areas that you want to download. So if, as a map author, you go and create some bookmarks that you want your field workers to use, they can tap on those bookmarks and then go to that area and download the map. You could use your current location if you want. Also, just to quickly filter the content in those maps, you can turn layers on and off. So a lot of great new features added to the offline experience for just simply downloading maps on the device. One of the other big things we did this past year was add the ability for you to, upfront as a GIS analyst, create maps, map areas that can be downloaded onto the device. And that dramatically simplifies the offline experience, not only for the GIS administrator, but but also for that mobile worker that you want to have named offline areas that they can just look at the name of, download, and get moving with their data collection work on the device. It minimizes the download area size too. I'm just going to start running this embedded video that'll show you how it works. From the item details of the map, you can click on the settings, go to the offline settings, open up the Managed Areas tool, and define that pre-planned area. To minimize the amount of content, we've added the ability for you to take irregular shapes offline too. So here I'm naming the offline area so it's easy for the mobile worker to understand. I'm setting the level of detail, and then I'm actually going to go digitize a polygon that can be used to define that region or area that I want to take offline. So you can see how we've got an interactive tool that lets you choose the polygon area if you want. A lot of shapes are irregular like this. Once you've constructed it, then you can hit save and it'll start to package that offline map for you. All right, some considerations there. That irregular map area capability is limited today to vector tile base maps. If you're using raster base maps, you still have to use an extent. The tile hosted services that you can use are the Esri's ArcGIS Online hosted services. You can also use tile services with ArcGIS Enterprise 10.7 and higher. Next thing I wanted to talk about was the way that we've simplified the offline experience for the mobile worker. You can see that as I had created that pre-planned map area, it was shown as a name, the Riverwalk Park. I could tap on the map, go to that specific area, and just download it by its name. And there you see that specific offline map area on the device. Using that named area, it's really easy to identify it for the mobile worker, and quite simple in the download process. Now, when it's offline like this, I can also add additional areas if I'd like. I don't have to just be limited by that pre-packaged area. Another aspect of this that we wanted to talk about with offline was the ability to sideload base maps. Sideloading base maps adds a lot of advantage to your field workflows. You can get staff to the field faster because those base maps can be packaged and sideloaded to your device independent of the web maps they use. They only have to download their operational data then. The base map's always there, and you can just use it. That really improves the download efficiency, reduces the load on your server infrastructure, reduces the download size. So if you're in a challenged environment, they're only bringing those features or perhaps the schema down. And there's a lot of ways to get those packages to devices. So let's just run that, take a look at it. Here again, back in the settings, back to the offline settings, I can look at the advanced options. And if I scroll down, what I'm going to find is that there's the ability for the device to use a tile package that it already has. That could be a raster tile package, or in this case, a vector tile package. And I've chosen a vector tile package here to show you. All right, let's get out of that. Oh. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to show you was how you can sideload those base maps onto a device. Now, traditionally, if you're using an iOS device, that's been through iTunes, but we can also use the Files app. And the Files app lets you support cloud sharing of your base maps. You could use iCloud, as this video demonstration is showing you. You could use Google Drive, OneDrive, Box. In fact, with the Files app, you could even support peer-to-peer sharing via AirDrop if you'd like to. So it's a quick and easy way to get the base maps on your device, and then inside a collector, you can just browse for those base maps and load them onto your device, as you're going to see here. So inside of collector, once that base map's there, I can then just start to use it independent of the map that I've downloaded. Okay, in addition to all of these download improvements that we've made, we've done some work on the synchronization process as well. You're going to see now that within Collector, you can synchronize directly within the map. Here I'm using a feature that we're going to show you in a little bit that lets you edit multiple features at once. I'm going to take these services from an in-service model to a to-be-retired model, and then directly within the map I can hit the sync button, and that brings up the sync panel, and from the sync panel I could review all the features that I've edited one by one, maybe change the attributes if I want, and then manually sync if I'd like to, or I could turn on the auto sync capability. And if I really want that synchronization to happen now, I can just tap the sync button and it will upload all of my edits for me right there within the map. Again, I could go back out of the map and do that synchronization as well, but we find that if you're in the process of doing your field data collection workflows, you don't want to jump out of that map. So give us a sync capability while you're directly in the map. Okay, so in addition to those sync improvements, we've been doing a bunch of work on the overall troubleshooting. You know, conditions can happen where the sync might fail on you. And what I'm showing you right here is a very classic example of that. In fact, let me pause the video for a second, bring it back, and let's take another look at it. What I've actually done is I've made a couple of edits locally in this map. The map itself is hosted behind our corporate firewall, and I want to be able to synchronize those changes back. The problem is my VPN connection has dropped, or I'm not in on the internal Wi-Fi. And when I go to sync, I get a sync error. So let's take a look at what happens there. I press the sync button, I actually press sync now, and an error appears. You can see that error right there. So what can we do? We can tap on that error itself, and it's going to give us more information. You see that information here. It says that it wasn't able to access the servers, and we can troubleshoot it. From the action button on the top right, we could actually send that information off if we'd like to. We can do it by mail, we could airdrop it, we could text it to our GIS administrator, and they can start to troubleshoot. Likewise, we've added settings inside a collector that help you along that way even further. So you can go into the settings dialog, turn on troubleshooting, the logging inside of troubleshooting, and then inside of that log actually see the detail of the error. Might not mean a lot to the field worker, but again, you could send that along to your server administrator and share those details so that they can figure out what the problem is. We've also added some additional information outside of the map for you to look at. You can know from the details of that map whether or not the sync has succeeded or failed, and in this instance, which is probably one of the most common, that you can't directly connect to the portal. So you see that directly inside of the map itself.
All right, that was a great review of the offline capabilities we've been working on in Collector. I wanted to take a spin through some of the additional things that we've been working on to make Collector easier to use. So some of these are relatively simple. Things like promoting certain tools. When we've talked with customers, they've always said, hey, I have a lot of layers in my map. I do want to change them. Obviously, previously the Layers tool was under the overflow menu here on the right-hand side of the toolbar, but now it's been promoted out to the main toolbar. Again, just one tap, but again, over the course of a day, that can really make a difference. In addition, you'll see that some of the icons have changed in our most recent release. We have updated icons to use those that are provided by Apple, and they're very standard. So the intent there is that if you're familiar with Apple apps that on iOS 13, you'll see those same icons, and those will have some additional meaning. So again, additional capabilities that we're working on just to try and make the app easier to use and more intuitive. So as Jeff mentioned, in our most recent release, we did add support for editing multiple features simultaneously, and he showed that briefly in an earlier slide. But the intent here is really to allow you to do inspection workflows a little bit more seamlessly and certainly more efficiently. And this is designed for inspection workflows where you're editing the asset or observation directly rather than using the related tables model where you would capture and maintain the history of the observations. So this has been really important. We've been asked for this for certain damage inspection workflows and other asset inventory or asset inspections. So in this case, you can update one or more features at a time, and we'll just run through this video and take a look at how it works. So within the map, this map is designed for data inspections. So I need to update each of the buildings as I've updated them. I tap on Edit Multiple. And at that point, I can select one or more features. If I had multiple layers, it would ask me to pick which layer. And then once I've done that, I can review the list and update the selection. I can just swipe to deselect that if I accidentally selected a feature I didn't want. Once I'm happy with my selection, I can tap Continue. And at that point, I get my editing form. Again, this is editing attributes only. So, of course, we can update domains or lists, dates as well as other values. So this is a really valuable way to go ahead and make a bunch of changes to a series of features that you're doing, maybe doing a drive-by survey to try and understand what's going on. You're trying to do that quickly. This is certainly a lot more efficient than doing each one of these individually. So now we'll go ahead and submit that. And you can see the status of those buildings and the color of those buildings that we just updated has changed. Another aspect of efficiency that we're working on is the scenarios where you're often repeating entries for multiple assets or observations. So we've allowed you to we store and allow you to access the recently used value for any given field. We do store up to 3. And really the goal here is if rather than typing those in, which is a time consuming and certainly can be error prone, we want to give you a way to do that more efficiently. So let's take a look here at an example. So here we've got another building, and this map only allows for asset. It doesn't allow for create, only updates. So here I'm going through and I'm making a couple of edits. And as I get down to the inspection team, you'll see that I have a recent values list. And if I tap that, I can see the recent values that I've used, and simply selecting one will fill in the entry and move to the next item in the form. So again, very easy to go through and update that feature if I may be seeing the same type of observation through the course of the day. In the current release, we support both string and numeric fields. Coded value domains are coming in the next release, which we'll talk about a little bit later.
Great, Doug. Thanks. So one of the other big features that we added to this last release of Collector is snapping. Snapping is turned on by default. You can snap when creating or updating points, lines, or areas. And what you're going to see here is that I started by creating a feature using GPS, and then I'm going to create a line actually using the map. And when I enter that, after I enter that first vertex, now I can, when I go to enter the second vertex, snap that to an existing service endpoint. And the snapping is really cool. It provides you both that visual feedback, but when you're holding the device, you get this haptic feedback, so you feel when the snap occurs. Again, you can snap to point features, you can snap to endpoints of lines, or even vertices on a polygon if you want. Another feature we added was the ability to simplify the enterprise sign-in. So as you might have experienced in the past, one of the hardest things with our field apps is actually getting your users to sign in, and that's equally more difficult when they're using ArcGIS Enterprise. Entering in that portal URL can be tedious and really hard to get the typing in correctly. So what we added was the ability for you, through the app link schema, to generate a QR code. You can then take that QR code, and what you probably saw in the little video, I'll just make that run again, is that you can tap on ArcGIS Enterprise to sign in, tap scan code, and then if you've put together a document that has that QR code inside of it, it will automatically enter in the portal URL and take you right to that entry point for your username and password. Really simplifies the overall experience. Now, pro tip for those out there that want to do it, not only can you generate that QR code for the portal URL, but you can also tag on the ability for it to open up a web map after you sign in as well. So if your responders, you're working with one specific map, that QR code can take you not only through the sign-in process, but right to the map that you want them to use to mark observations in.
Great. So some of the other capabilities we've been working on is integrating some of the other apps in the field that we have available. So Tracker for ArcGIS is our most recent addition to the Field App Suite. And Tracker for ArcGIS allows you to track and capture your locations as you're moving around. What we've done in the most recent release of Collector is allow you to access those tracks directly within Collector. So if you're signed in as the same user in both apps on that device, you can view your local tracks in any map. And here within the Layers tool, you can go ahead and see that I see my tracks. I can turn those on, and I can see the location where I've been in my tracker tracks. And this does honor the settings for time windows based in trackers. So if I wanted to see just my tracks for today, it would be honored here as well. And again, of course, because this information is all stored offline, I can be offline with an offline map, as I am in this case. You can see I'm in airplane mode now, and I still have access to those tracks. So this can be really useful when you're doing proof of work, trying to make sure that you've gotten coverage. So in this case, you're doing damage inspections. I can see that I missed a court here nearby, so I'll need to go back and do that. So again, just an additional productivity improvement there. All right, so let's talk a little bit about ArcGIS Arcade. So ArcGIS Arcade is a powerful cross-platform scripting language that gets used across the ArcGIS platform, both desktop as well as web, as well as our field apps. So within Collector, you can see Arcade in use in a few different areas. Renderers, for example, so there's smart mapping renderers that I'm sure are familiar with. Pop-ups and labels as well are pretty popular within Collector. So I'll go ahead and just play this workflow. This particular example showcases how you can simplify capturing weather observations. So if you're a firefighter, you're going out and trying to determine, hey, what's my relative humidity? That's a very important piece of information. I need to capture two inputs, dry bulb and wet bulb temperature. And once I do that, I'm using Arcade to collect some information. So again, I'm going to go ahead and save that point location, that observation I just made. And if we scroll up, and I'll just pause the video here for a second, you'll see that on the map we have labels that give you a relative humidity of 11%. as well as a heat index of 88%. So this is, and again, these are also can be made visible in the form itself. So just a simple example of how you can make folks' lives that are out in the field a lot more efficient, because they don't need to know how to calculate that. Typically, when they've done this, they've used a chart and had to figure that out, which is pretty error prone. And obviously, this information can flow back into the organization as well. So this is one example of some arcade expressions. There's a whole GitHub repo for those of you who are interested that is out on GitHub. There are a number of examples specific to Collector, but there's many other examples for you to review that you may find useful as is, or as a good starting point for your own work. All right, so let's talk about some of the other apps. We briefly mentioned the use of Tracker and pairing that with Collector. There are a number of patterns that we consistently see with Collector. One of those is the collect and monitor pattern, where obviously the information that's flowing back to the organization via Collector is being shown within Operations Dashboard. Operations Dashboard has been undergoing a significant improvements. Definitely encourage you to take a look at that if you have not and you're using this pattern. In addition, another popular pattern we see is tasking work out to your field workforce, using the Workforce for ArcGIS app, and then using Workforce to direct the field worker to the proper location, and then using Collector to perform the asset inventory or an asset inspection as needed. Again, maps and forms, always also a popular capability with Survey 123. Navigation, certainly navigation, getting to the right place at the right time efficiently using information that's been authored by my organization for travel modes and other things is certainly a integration pattern we see pretty frequently. But probably most interesting to this group is how do I integrate my own app, a custom app with Collector? And there's a number of ways that you can do that. So let's dig into that a little bit more. So we've had capabilities to link into Collector to perform certain tasks. Jeff mentioned opening a map, but also centering at a location. These things have been available for quite some time. In our most recent releases, we've been adding additional support. One of those is for universal app links. So if you are familiar with our app links before, they all were prefixed with an ArcGIS-collector scheme, which is something that is not necessarily recognized by all apps on iOS. That can be an impediment. So we now use an HTTPS link. And if you click that link and you don't have the app installed, we now direct you to a web page where it directs the person to install Collector so they can continue. In addition, supporting for executing a search directly. So maybe you need people to get to a specific asset. You could have that search immediately executed once you open that map and direct them, and then they could use navigation or the compass to get to that specific location. We did add some new capabilities for adding features. So Jeff mentioned some of the locate work that we did with EOS positioning. So that took advantage of this, of how do you treat the locations that are coming in? Are they treated as a point that you just want to be added verbatim, or is that something where you'd want to treat it as a GPS location? Some additional capabilities returning to the app that if you are a developer of an iOS app and you want, once the collection's done, to return to your app, we offer that capability. And we're also continuing to augment this. In April, we will be adding support for updating attributes of an existing feature as well. From a documentation perspective, we do document this pretty thoroughly within our help. I'll just slide over to that. And that app link will take you here to our Deploy Your Map page. And if you scroll down to open your map from a link, you'll see some documentation along with required parameters for each of these capabilities. So you see this reference context sort of outlines the key capabilities that you can take advantage of. So let's take a look at some other things. Python. Python is a great tool for automating work that, frankly, we all would like to do less of and spend time on other things. We continue to work to try and provide additional capabilities if you are a Python developer to simplify a number of different areas around working with Collector. That can be around deployment or doing calculations as part of a back office capability, but also doing other things like just simplifying the data collection authoring process as well. So let's take a look at a couple of those. So I guess first, so here is our GitHub repo. So Esri, github.esri.collector-tools. Again, publicly available. We do offer a number of different capabilities here. We offer Jupyter notebooks, Python scripts, as well as toolboxes. So if you're using that in the desktop environment for Pro, you can certainly just grab these toolboxes and get rolling. And there's documentation here for each of those aspects. I just want to highlight a few different capabilities here. Jeff mentioned the ability to scan a QR code. We do offer a Python library as part of the ArcGIS API for Python that allows you to interact with our apps. Collector is one of those apps there. This is also available for apps like Workforce and Explorer and Navigator as well. But this just simply goes through and connects to a particular portal. In this case, I'm going to ArcGIS Online. And then I can go through and start building URLs directly using the ArcGIS API for Python to do certain things. So this case, I'm creating a URL scheme that I can use to open a specific map, for instance. Again, and there's some other examples here. So we take a look at the generating an app link using the portal URL. You can see here that portal URL is included here, so you can see that parameter is now available. So again, simplifying that deployment, as well as if you wanted to do something with ArcGIS Enterprise logins, this allows you to bypass the initial screen where people have to type in the prefix. So that is also an additional saver in terms of reducing some of the complexity to get people signed in. And then finally, because it's Python and there's just a wealth of other libraries, you can go in and create, import, for example, the QR code library and just quickly generate that QR code to deploy that without having to use a website, which is obviously also available. So let's take a look at just one more example. So in this case, Collector, as you know, shows you all of the maps on the mobile device of all of the maps that are configured for Collector. That is, they have a Collector keyword, they have one or more editable layers in them, so that can be a lot of maps. So this particular notebook allows you to quickly update one or a set of maps based on different criteria and disable them so that you can simplify that and reduce the number of maps that your field workers see. So just another example of how you can use the ArcGIS API for Python to simplify some of those workflows.
Hey, Doug.
Yes?
I think you actually have some blogs written on this too, don't you?
We do have some blogs written on this. We do have blogs on this particular topic, as well as an example here where you can configure feature search within your web map. So again, if you are making changes to your fields or what needs to be searched on, this is something you could go ahead and do individual maps, but also obviously a set of maps, which really is really great. So yeah, we do have a couple of blogs out on these, as well as a number on Arcade, as well in the use in our field apps as well. Good point. And again, from an Arcade perspective, we do have a pretty large list of things that you can take advantage of there.
In fact, to plug one of Doug's articles, there's a really cool one if you're in the pipeline space or the gas space. There's one that's focused on tracking and traceability where you can decode a barcode using Arcade. So I encourage you to go check that out.
All right. So that's, for the most part, we've been covering what's already available to you today.
Lots of stuff.
Lots of good stuff that's come in over the past several months. There's a lot of things yet to come. So I think first and foremost, later this month, we will be shooting to get our first release of the new collector out on Android, which I know has been eagerly anticipated, and we're excited to have that almost ready for deployment. We do have an active beta program for this. We've had a lot of people participating and contributing, and so
What's our latest numbers on that?
20,000, I believe, is the folks that we've had install the beta and work with it. So if you are interested in seeing some of these capabilities starting to come to life, this is where it's going to happen, and that will be starting to come out later this month. In terms of on iOS specifically, we are planning a release here in the next month or so that does add some additional capabilities, things like attaching PDFs and other Office files, so Word documents and the like. If you need to collect those or annotate those, mark those up in the field and attach those to your report, to your observations, you can do that now. As mentioned, we are continuing to enhance the recent values work to support coded value domains. And we've listened to a lot of folks tell us that we needed to make some UX improvements in terms of the collect experience, in terms of the visibility of the map underneath while I'm collecting for other features. And we've made some changes there, and we look forward to getting your feedback. Hopefully we've addressed some of those concerns.
Hey, before you move on there, Doug, one thing about the Android release I think we should mention is that we're following suit with the way that we release the iOS version. So if you're in production with Collector on Android devices today, what you're going to see is that application's going to remain in Google Play. It'll have a naming change to Classic, just like we did on iOS, and a new listing come in so that you can migrate from old to new if you want, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. So so that is something that we'll certainly be blogging about. Jeff will undoubtedly be blogging about as the date draws near, so that you and your customers and field workers can be prepared. And then again, you both will be available, so you can take your time in evaluating and migrating it. But certainly, we'd like you to start now, and really take advantage of some of the new capabilities that we've been adding. All right, so let's talk about what's next beyond April. So we have been working on a new web app that's designed to mitigate and reduce the pain points that you have when authoring and deploying web maps for field data collection. And that would be part of ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise, just as you're familiar with other apps like the Operations Dashboard, for example. And it's really designed, again, to help you more efficiently author and deploy web maps for use with the Collector app. So let's take a quick tour through this right now. So first thing, obviously, is we're in ArcGIS Online, and I'm going to tap on the app switcher to access other apps, just like I do things like Workforce. And that's going to go ahead and launch my new web app. At this point now, I'm getting a curated list of maps that I own that are configured for Collector. So these maps are all available for me to work with. I'm going to go ahead and configure Redlands Water. You'll see that this map, I can get some information about it. I could update that. You'll notice that it's not available for offline use. So we're going to go through a quick tour of how you can configure that and how we tried to work on some of these pain points. So you'll see here, I'm just going to stop the video for a second, that you'll see a number of lists of layers here. So these layers are broken up by whether or not they're editable. So you see that I have editable layers, I have some reference layers, obviously those that do not have editing enabled on them, as well as my base map. So I can quickly see the contents of my map. And then you'll notice that I see that there's some layers that are not available yet for taking this map offline. We'll go ahead and play the video, and you'll see that it says that sync is not enabled. So for these layers, I can come over and tap on the menu and get some options. So I could open the web map or view its details. If in this case I happen to own these layers, so I'm just going to immediately enable sync directly from here. I didn't have to go out elsewhere in ArcGIS Online to find out where to do that. So again, centralizing some of those things that are really painful in terms of getting them right the first time. So now I can turn on offline mode. And we also have support, of course, for defining map areas, which Jeff showed earlier in the session. So again, the same user experience, very familiar user experience to what you would have seen if you did this directly from ArcGIS Online. So again, won't go into a lot of details here, but just sufficient to know that I can do all of this work to prepare for offline directly within the web app. The other thing that we've consistently hear from people is sharing maps effectively and consistently isn't something everyone gets right the first time. So we're utilizing some new capabilities that have come into the platform to support sharing. And if I just pause the video for a second, you see that if you have been using the sharing within ArcGIS Online, you see this is a very familiar user experience to what you've been doing there as well. So we're really trying to keep this very consistent, but also make this directly available for you as you're getting ready to deploy your web map, that you can go ahead and change those groups once I hit OK, and make those available to my field workers. Once I hit save, you'll get the same experience that you're familiar with of saying, hey, there's other layers whose sharing properties need to be updated as well. And there you go. So in this case, obviously we've now quickly made a change to make our web map available for offline, as well as share it directly to our field workforce, all through the web app. So just a quick glimpse on where we're heading with this. And really the goal is to make your life as a GIS administrator or a field supervisor easier by simplifying these deployments. And it is also going to be the foundation for authoring smart forms, which is a big deal. We are going to have a beta on this shortly available for you. So keep an eye on Jeff Shaner's blogs because he will be blogging about this when it's available. We'd love to get your feedback. All right, so let's take a look at how does, we talked about smart forms being something that's coming and how the web app will help us author those. Let's talk a little bit about what types of capabilities is coming in the first release of smart forms for Collector. So the first one, of course, is required fields. We know that while you can use certain database properties, making fields not nullable is something that you can do to make sure that that information gets entered. We do want to provide a much more flexible way for you to do that, even on a per map basis. So that's definitely something we're working on there. Conditional visibility is always a common request, certainly one that we've been working very hard to try and satisfy. And let's take a look at the video here and that highlights this as well as the field grouping within Collector. So in this example, we're just going through and we're collecting some trees. So the first thing we're going to look at, if I'm just going to advance the video here a little bit, as you can see within the form, I have certain fields like the inspection date, but I also have groups. So you saw that I expanded this group for tree info. So you can see the tree type is cherry, and it's got some additional information in this group. If I continue, I'm going to change the tree type. And the tree type is going to dictate how the form behaves. So once I go in here and change that to apple, I'll stop the video again quick.
Oh, not quick enough. Oh, you reset it. That's what happened.
Yes. You can see that now I've got an apple variety. So that was a new question that got entered. into my form, new field got entered into my form. Now if I go ahead and say that that's a Honeycrisp apple, I can see now I again still have this has fruit question. I can say yes, it does have fruit. And again, you'll notice that the amount of fruit question is now, it's also available. So I need to fill that in based on whether or not the tree had fruit. So we'll go ahead and let this play out. But you get the idea from the standpoint that certainly the conditional visibility can simplify the form. For field workers, they only have to enter what's necessary, as well as cases like this where, for example, I'm typing the height. If the height is greater than 10, I'm getting a description here. If it's greater than 10, now I need to determine whether or not that tree needs to be trimmed or not. Again, so that was a quick look at conditional visibility as well as field grouping to help simplify the form and streamline those field data collection workflows. In addition, we are working on some other things like input types so that we can do a better job of recognizing certain fields that are defined as a phone number or an email, for example, and take the appropriate action on the device, whether to call someone or launch an email program. And again, much like the web app, we are planning a beta release for this later in Q1, early Q2, with shooting for our initial first release in June. So we know this has been a big ask for many years. We're excited about it, and we'd certainly like to get your feedback in the beta.
You know, just to add in, I think one of the things that's really cool about this work is that we're doing it in coordination with our online team and the rest of the platform. So, you know today how the form that you have in Collector is driven based upon the pop-up definition. This is really bringing an additional capability we're internally kind of referring to as a feature form, and we're writing that to the web map specification. So Collector's kind of the tip of the spear here, but not only will Collector be able to render and utilize the great new features you see with grouping and conditional visibility and whatnot, but so will web applications in the future, so will ArcGIS Pro. So we're finally bringing that smart form capability across the whole platform so you can use it wherever you need to. It's great stuff.
That's a great point, Jeff. I think that that certainly does add a lot of value for folks, even once this data starts coming into the office when you're doing QA or QC, being able to utilize that same form logic in those other apps, being ArcGIS Pro or a web app, is going to be really, really valuable.
And those 4 things, that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? I mean, there's a lot more that we're going to do with smart forms. This is just our first phase of it. So that's exciting times.
Absolutely. So on that note, so what's beyond, what's next? What's coming even beyond beyond the summer? So we are continuing to work on smart forms. As Jeff mentioned, this is an area that we really want to continue pushing forward. We know that there are additional requirements that we have heard from you in the past, and certainly we're going to want to continue to hear your feedback on what aspects of smart forms are most important to you and what you'd like to see. And then we do have some other initiatives that we are working on. We're looking to add support for vertical datum transformations. This is just coming into our underlying runtime SDK. And that will allow us to capture orthometric heights for those of you who are interested in the high accuracy workflows in particular. And we are looking at adding support for indoor mapping and positioning floor awareness. This is something that we are working on and planning for. As part of ArcGIS Enterprise 10.8.1, there is support for additional support coming in for branch versioning that we'll be looking to take advantage of, as well as part of a broader initiative to bring additional capabilities for the utility network. That's a big initiative for us this year and something we're looking at actively. So, Jeff, I don't know if you had anything else to mention on.
Great stuff. I think the only other thing, I think we do have one kind of resources slide that we added. So product page has lots of user stories to it. We really are interested in hearing those user stories. So if you want to share them with everyone else, please reach out to us. Let us know. Our doc website has lots of great material, including a set of learn lessons that help you jumpstart your use of Collector. One of the things that we've been talking about doing is once these videos are out and live is we kind of, because it's a video format, we really miss the interactiveness and the QA part. Putting out a link to it from the GeoNet community site, and then generating some discussion around the presentation and questions you might have through GeoNet. Don't forget that GitHub repo, lots of wonderful stuff there. And as we showed you with our roadmap, we really want to hear more from you. So throw ideas out on the ideas site. We're actively mining that site, and it helps us prioritize the work we have to do forward. So that's the other stuff I had for you, Doug.
Great.
Got anything else?
No, I think we're done.
All right, thank you.